So last New Year's Eve, I'd had a bit to drink and decided it was a good idea to meet up with a friend of mine. This friend, you might know her, is No Justice, a friend of the channel who streams on YouTube and Twitch. Go check her out. If you like this channel, you're almost certainly going to like what she does. I had already been drinking for quite a while, so by the time I'd met up with her and her friends, I was quite drunk, as has been known to happen on New Year's Eve, apparently. That's what I'm hearing. So we got to talking, and we eventually came to politics because we're both political people and we make political videos and streams. During this, she put forward the idea that the Tories were completely done as a political party. And I pushed back for reasons I'll get into detail about a bit later, but it was mostly, perhaps somewhat ironically, me being a little bit conservative. Why bring this up? Because I think I was wrong, and I don't really talk very often about the times where I'm wrong and why I've changed my mind, so this could be an interesting exercise, and also a way to say to a friend, you were right, I was wrong. I was simply unfamiliar with the Tories game. Otherwise, it was a pretty good New Year's Eve, perfectly good fun. No Justice if you're watching this. Let's do it again sometime, and assuming this goes the way I think it will, I think I might owe you a drink. Because I'm going to guess that everyone's going to think I was wrong. Also, I'm doing this because I'm so ruthlessly committed to dialectics that I am constantly at war with the person I was on New Year's Eve, who is a clown and a coward. I want to do something a little bit different with this video. I'm going to present to you my two cases, a slightly updated version of the case I would have made on New Year's Eve if I was a bit more coherent and cogent about the Tories maybe being not fine, but essentially alive. The other will be the case I've come to now, which is that the Tories are fucked beyond repair. What I want from you in the audience is feedback. Now, of course, a lot of you will take to the comments to let me know what you think in detail, and I appreciate that. Please do that. But it is hard for me to gauge a general sentiment from all of your well thought out and detailed comments. With that in mind, in both the description of the video and in a pinned comment, there will be a link to a poll. All you have to do is tell me whether you think the Tories are fine or whether they're finished. I'm not sure if that's like the exact wording I'll use, but I'll make sure it's clear. I'll make sure it's clear which side you're voting on. I'll check on the result in about 2 weeks, and I'll just see what you all make of it, and who knows what I'll do with that. Maybe there'll be a quick follow-up, maybe I'll make a post. I don't know. I'll do something with it. I'm just not sure what. I have no clue why. I have no actual plan here. My only request is that you watch both arguments I make, which I will try to dedicate equal substance to, which will be easy because I have no real stake in the Tory party's survival or death. They're pretty irrelevant to me, which I think may have given away what direction a lot of this is going to go. So yeah, if you do think I've made a killer argument before you make it to the end, then you're free to vote early. I can't stop you, and I appreciate you sticking around if you do decide to do that, because I'm really going to explain, or at least try to explain, my New Year's Eve position, which, again, I have dismissed as a clown and coward's position, and my current position, as strongly as I can. And since I'm kind of still on the fence, you know, even though I'm maybe leaning quite strongly in one direction, I want to see what you all think. I want to see what you all think. I'm really interested just to see where you're all at on this issue. So yeah, if you're participating in my experiment, thanks. If you don't want to, too bad you're participating, because we're getting started with the Tory positive case. Oh, also, before I carry on, if my voice sounds weird, it's because I'm a little ill, and I'm recording this a little ill, which is why I don't look, you know, as pristine as I usually do, because I have been, you know, under the weather and just sort of in and out of having illness. So just bear that in mind, be kind about it, and yeah. No, okay, this time for real, we're going to do the Tory positive case. Now, it might feel like a stretch to present an optimistic case for the Tories, but at the time, I originally had this moment down the pub. The Tories were still second. The fact that I have to qualify it like that tells you how big my task really is. I really have 5 key points that we can use to make this case. First is that we've been here before. The Conservative Party and its predecessor parties have suffered really severe defeats. If you take the post-war era, you've got 1945, 1966, and 1997, which stand out, two of which came after long periods in government, one of which came at the end of World War II, which I think means we're entitled to question the deification of Winston Churchill. Like, if you're the hero people claim you are, how come you're getting absolutely annihilated by a guy whose first name is Clement? And I get that Attlee's government was really important for this country, and there's more to him winning than Churchill's own disgusting unpopularity, but like, come on. We can extend this line of thought back further into the past. In 1906, the Conservatives lost 246 seats after 21 years in power and were left with 156. That's not massively different from the amount that they have now, which is 121, and it was a similar amount of seats lost. You can look at 1880, where they suffered another severe defeat, and even if you go back to their predecessor party, the Tories, yeah, like, they were actually just called the Tories, in 1832, they were completely smashed as a political force after 3 elections in 3 years where they just kept losing seats. You'll note that after each of these cases, eventually there was another Conservative government. They are not just the most electorally successful political party in the Western world, they're cockroaches. They have survived calamities that other parties in other countries don't come back from. To give a point of comparison, in the 2002 Turkish election, every single incumbent party lost every one of their seats. Only one of those parties has ever managed to become a meaningful national political force in its own right again. The rest are legacy parties. They're curiosities and brands from the past. Nothing significant in the political landscape. The Tories have survived it all, under various franchises, under various systems. Admittedly, a lot of the early democratic system in the UK was really easily corruptible, but they did survive it all. I think it would be unwise to dismiss out of hand this institutional robustness. They seem, as a party, able to retain relevance, and we would need to suggest that the institutional character of the Tories has changed so dramatically that this is no longer a factor. It may not be enough on its own, but I do think the Tories are a bit like Homer Simpson's rancid sandwich for the British public. They can't stay mad at it. My second point is maybe a bit simple, but they are still the main opposition in Parliament, which gives them a couple of critical advantages. Firstly, because they get the most opportunities to scrutinise the government, and because the press tends to treat the main opposition as if they're on equal footing with the government, they have what I call a puncher's chance. The more opportunities they have to just land a blow on the government, the more likely they are, even completely at random, to manage it. Which, incidentally, the day of recording, Kemi Badenoch did manage this at Prime Minister's Questions. Now, is it a good sign that I'm saying that they have to rely on volume for success in this area? Probably not. And when we get to my case against them, you'll understand a little bit as to why this is the case. But in that spirit, there is another advantage to their current position, which is that as the main opposition, they have quite a few MPs that they can rotate in and out of the front bench, or if you believe the leadership is a problem, which some might, you can rotate them into the leadership. Now, is the leadership actually a problem? Well, there's a reason Kemi Badenoch is on the thumbnail for this video, but the good news is there are 120 other MPs you could pick from, and surely just one of them is up for the job. If you gathered 120 random British people, I think it's plausible that at least 2 would have some aptitude for the job. Again, is this an argument that suggests great strength? Probably not, and I'll admit that, but honestly, since Liz Truss, the Tories have become such a joke at the leadership level anyway, that I think, what do they have to lose in just having a battle royale and seeing who comes out on top? I just scratched my arm by accident. Or just resorting to sortition among their MPs, or I don't know, picking the next leader based on how good at Smash Brothers they are. You have to assume that there's someone among the 120 other MPs who would grow in the role and potentially at least be a neutral factor in all of this. It speaks to how bad it is that I don't need to say that the leader would be good, just neutral, inoffensive, just kind of there. It'd do them the world of good, and I think that among 120 people, there must be one. They just kind of have to be there on a statistical level, and I think MPs probably know who they are. Now, whether they'd pick them for leader or the membership would vote for them is another matter, but it being plausible means they might pick that person. Stranger things have been known to happen in British politics. Let's move on from speculation to something a bit more solid for my next point. It's going to seem like a stretch to use the local elections we just had to construct part of a positive case for the Tories, not least because they got absolutely pummeled into the dirt. I mean, Labour did badly, but the Tories had an apocalyptic local election. They were pretty much ground into a fine paste. And according to the projection for a national result, the Tories were fourth on about 15%, which is really fucking bad. I think if you're not from the UK or you're not locked in on politics generally here, it's hard to grasp how bad this is, especially when it's not an election with a substantially different electorate to other elections that we have here, like the UK's last European election, which also threw out an astonishing result, but saw a regression to the mean of regular two-party politics afterwards. This has not been the case following these local elections. Understanding that these results are a complete catastrophe, what might I be cooking here? Well, allow me to introduce you to the county of Nottinghamshire. You'll notice that a lot of the county is in turquoise for the Reform Party, and they did win the most seats and control of the council, and it's obviously going to be a catastrophe, but let's sort of move past it. If you don't live in the county or aren't from there, this map is just an abstraction. It means nothing. It's just two shades of blue with the occasional island of some other colours. So let me try my best to walk you through it. This is a county that the Conservatives won easily at the last council elections and at the 2019 general election. In fact, I think it was the county where they either did the best or close to best on average in terms of swing at that election. They united this entire county, apart from the city smack bang in the middle of it, but that's a whole other thing. This county contains former coal mining communities, deprived urban areas, and some more traditionally conservative areas like your posh towns and nice villages. You know, white people places with money. This has become the ultimate electoral dream, and much like Blair's 97 victory, it's becoming the obsession of all parties to replicate Boris Johnson's 2019 success. The thing is, you can't do that anymore. And to subvert the inevitable Moneyball reference, you don't even need to recreate it in the aggregate. You see, in this map, what you're seeing is the Conservatives retaining their strength in the posh towns and nice villages. What I'll call market town England. You know, the kind of place where people aren't bankrupted by paying £6 for a pint, get really angry about speed limits, and would likely hit you with the idea that they're fiscally conservative but socially liberal, while just kind of being conservative all round. If this is the kind of place where their remaining strength is, and they can't get the former coal mining and deprived urban areas back because Reform are holding on to places like Ashfield and Mansfield, then you need to lean into the strengths you have and the weaknesses your direct rivals have. This means that Reform isn't the actual problem for the Tories. It's the Lib Dems. And while Ed Davey is probably the most popular UK level politician, the Lib Dems' strength is in the same place as the Tories. So that's step one. They need to do what David Cameron did and squeeze the Lib Dems. It's been done before, and it can be done again, and I suspect it might be easier than you'd think with a bit of softening on just about everything, but just soften up. We'll get on to whether they can do this or not later, but so long as it's hypothetically possible, it's going in here. Now, you can see many paths from here. For example, given how obnoxiously racist Labour are in government, you could make significant inroads into more diverse urban areas. In the case of Nottinghamshire, that would be... You're smart enough to guess this. Nottingham! Well done. You're so smart. I've always thought you were really smart. In fact, at the last general election, You saw the Tories pull this off in Leicester East, which was their sole gain at that election. That's my pitch. The Tories' viable path lies in squeezing the Lib Dems and recovering their strength in their traditional heartlands, fucking off the idea of winning places like Ashfield and Mansfield ever again, and trying to replicate the Leicester East formula, though it's important to note that there was some really specific dynamics at play in that seat. But on a superficial level, you can see what I'm trying to get at, which does bring me neatly onto the fourth point. You might look at that and say, even if we exclude the issue of getting the Tories to actually try this, it's just not enough to stay alive as a party. And you'd be right if we were talking about a traditional two-party environment in the UK. This strategy might take the Tories up to about 24% if they nailed it. And that would equal Rishi Sunak's disastrous result. But we're not in a normal two-party environment. We're now in a multi-party environment. And while it's obscured a little by how dramatic the Tories' problems are, Labour are also slowly collapsing. In fact, I would argue in the long run, they're in bigger trouble, but that's a topic for another day. This has a few effects. First, that 24% would probably leave them comfortably in second place, possibly even contending for the top spot, depending on how things pan out. But also, it has the effect of making every single seat a toss-up. We really could have three parties within 2 to 3% of each other and 10 to 20 seats of each other. The final effect is that this has left the Tories in a very specific situation. It's important to realise that my question isn't, are the Tories going to win the next election? It's, are they finished as a party? And to win the race to not be finished, they don't need to outrun everyone. They just need to outrun Labour. It's like the two guys are stuck in the woods when they spot a bear thing, where one of the guys goes, I don't need to outrun the bear, I just need to outrun you. The Tories don't need to win or even poll above 25%. They just need to outrun Labour. And let me tell you, Labour are a fucking shit show in themselves. The only reason they're not collapsing as fast as the Tories is they have a marginally deeper bench and the press are babying them a little. For a lot of reasons that aren't really important here, my final point is more simple. There's just a lot of time left until the next election. I doubt Labour will either lose enough MPs to lose its majority or that they'll call a snap election without a seismic shift in their own fortunes, which means the Tories have until 2029 and the political environment is very volatile at the moment. It's possible that the current front bench lands a fatal blow on Labour, or that Reform implodes, or that they find a leadership that can soften their hard edges and grow in the role over this time. The Tories are great at ousting their own leaders, rather famously. They might move against a failing leadership soon. In fact, there are already some rumblings there, and replace it with one that could manage to turn it around. Basically, we don't know what's going to happen with any certainty. Even if the direction is what it is currently, with the weight of the history and the potential there if they want to embrace it, I don't think you can discount the idea that the Tories still have a role to play in British politics, if they want it, which is the main question. Do they want it? And even if they do, are the conditions really there? Or was the version of me on New Year's Eve just wrong and a little drunk? Well, they were definitely a little drunk, but they might also have been wrong, which is the main problem. Alright, it's time for the part that I think most of you are here for. It's the part where I absolutely lay into the Tories, so let's... Oh, I'm excited for this part. Let's do it. Let's do it. Well, my hand is shaking so much I can't even press start on the teleprompter. That's how excited I was. Let's do it. That was an admirable attempt to recreate the version of myself on New Year's Eve and what they would have said if they were here now. And in isolation, I think it sounds kind of plausible. We may hate the Tories and want them to become an antique that we keep on display, but on its own, it's almost possible that they could find some way back from the hole they find themselves in. Except, a lot of the points in the positive case rely on a lack of context to have plausibility. And I have to confess, it requires missing out on some glaring details. Take the argument about the Tories having suffered defeats. There's nothing incorrect about what I said then. The Tories have suffered really bad defeats and they've come back from it. Not always quickly, but eventually they have found a way back and often outlast their opponents. It's why they have the reputation they do for winning. The difference is that when the Tories suffered these defeats in the past, they happened in a two-party environment. Even if you take 1997, when there was a strong third party, they were still 14% ahead of the Liberal Democrats. There is no real question about which of those two will be providing the main opposition to Labour in that case, even if the Tories have a long time in the wilderness. The party in fourth at that election was the Referendum Party, who got 2.6% of the total vote. It was very much a two-party environment in most of the country. In 2024, the Tories only finished about 9 points ahead of Reform, and the Lib Dems, who came fourth in the popular vote and third in seats, got 12%. Today, the party that gets an equivalent vote share to what the Referendum Party did in 97 is the SNP, who are the fifth party by popular vote, who only run in Scotland. Even independents won 2% across the country. The local elections were taken as a signal that we'd entered multi-party politics, but the signs were kind of already there. We don't really have national elections in the same way we used to. We have a lot of regional elections that aggregate into a national one. Depending on where you are, there might be between 3 and 6 viable candidates to win a seat. Between the 5 major parties, the SNP, Plaid Cymru, and now some local independents, there's a lot of competition. I used the analogy of outrunning a bear earlier, but Labour and the Tories have to outrun 4 different bears, and they're willing to divide the spoils. And if we're looking at the numbers as they exist now, the Tories are getting mauled by the bears first. In a multi-party system, a party that's just taken the kind of beating the Tories have might have had the first past the post spell broken. It certainly looks like that at a glance. The other obvious, glaring issue is Kemi Badenoch. Look, I don't like to be mean about people, but she's just fucking awful. Like, she is very clearly unable to do the job. She's repeating ideas from right-wing Facebook groups. She's unable really to think on her feet. She seems to lack a coherent vision of what she wants to do. And all of this was pretty obvious from the start. I'm pretty sure I directly compared her to Liz Truss before she became the leader, because it was obvious she was that kind of liability and had a similar mindset. Her being incapable and, in my view, unable to learn in the role isn't a cause of the issue so much as a severe symptom. In my first argument, I pointed out that there were 121 Tory MPs, so they must have someone among them who can do the job. The problem is, upon inspection, it quickly becomes apparent the bench is non-existent. It's not even shallow. It doesn't exist. The bench is sand. Let's suppose Badenoch was to go. The most likely successor is Robert Jenrick, who is just a powerfully odd person in his own right, who's also way too online. I have more to say about him later and in future videos, because this is kind of becoming the month of Jenrick in my early drafts for scripts. The other potential leaders are not great. Mel Stride, that's a complete sentence. James Cleverly is the country's most embarrassing 40k fan. Like, none of these people who lost to Badenoch have anything to offer. Then you look at the backbenchers, and it's even worse. It's one thing for a party to lose so many MPs at an election. It's quite another for only the most useless MPs to have survived. It's a statistical marvel on par with Liz Truss's collapse. Incidentally, she didn't even make it into the parliament. So that's how low the bar is, and there isn't anyone able to raise it. This lack of talent has led to some genuine rumblings that the Tories are trying to bring back Boris Johnson, a proposition that on its face seems absurd, but honestly they may not have a better option. It's either that or they bring Rishi Sunak back. Those are genuinely the two best options they have, and neither really fix this core issue. because neither have any interest in improving the quality of MPs in their party, but in loyalty. They're all just terrible, and maybe one of them could grow in the role, but I don't see it. The other thing that I'm not seeing is related to what I said about the local elections before. Yes, I think my reading of the local elections is fair, that there are plausible paths available to the Conservatives. The problem is, just because a path is available doesn't mean they'll take it. I think there are a lot of reasons to believe that the Conservative Party's ability to reinvent itself out of self-preservation is going to be overridden by a lot of different factors. Firstly, the party is having semi-serious discussions about Boris Johnson coming back, which says to me that they want to replicate at least some aspect of his prior success in 2019, which means their focus will be on reform strategically. And I think there's plenty of evidence to suggest that this is what they're focusing on. A lot of the questions asked of Tory MPs by the press are about reform. So that's where their minds are. They're not the only ones who want to construct that coalition. Labour are obsessed with it too, through the red wall construct. But at least in Labour's case, it's easier to unite the interest of those areas with their core. Like, it's not as big a pivot as it might appear. For the Tories, I think the biggest problem is they don't know who their voters are. I mentioned their shallow bench just now, but it's not just shallow, it's filled with people who never really had to reinvent their politics without the press covering for them. Now, the press is bored of the Tories. There's no real covering fire to help them transform. Let's suppose they even wanted to take the obvious route back to relevance for them. Not a single one of the senior politicians who would be up for the leadership have really experienced the Tories as that kind of party. They've all experienced the peak of their political careers as Johnsonian dipshits or Brexiteer culture warriors. This crop of Tory politicians are the product of the crush the saboteurs atmosphere of the 2017 election. They have no capacity to squeeze the Lib Dems, in part because they've snookered themselves. Their actions have polarized the electorate to such an extent that even conservative-minded Lib Dems won't look twice at the party because it's just a bunch of people screaming right-wing brain rot at the electorate, and if they wanted that, they could get that elsewhere. Or let's suppose they did moderate and soften some of their sharp edges. That had opened them up to being slammed by reform and the Labour Party, who are fighting over their carcass right now, or at least one of them believes they are. But if they are, they're not doing too well. Regardless, it leaves the core who are with them wondering if that's what they really want. They're really in a perfectly fucked situation. They can't move, otherwise they risk totally tipping over into the depths. The path is there, but they can't take it, or if they try to, they have to get it absolutely perfect, and there's no one available and no one up for consideration that would be able to pull that off. The lack of focus on high quality candidates in favor of shithousing wins by any means necessary has just left them with nothing. There's also this possibility that what we're seeing is just the process of obsolescence, that the varieties of politics that can be offered by the Conservative Party in this day and age just don't relate to the ways the world and politics is changing. In a society where party loyalties are so weak among the electorate, where volatility has become the norm, and where people crave authenticity, perhaps they've just had their time. Perhaps in a post-Brexit, post-Trump world, the Tories have just got nothing left to offer ideologically. If you want a socially moderate, economically centre-right offering, you can go to Ed Davey. If you want a rhetorical commitment to British patriotism with the intent to preserve the core of that identity, you can go to Reform. I do think you might be a fascist if you do that, but the option is there. If you want an ecological or conservationist focus, the Greens are there. If you desire middle management and austerity, Labour provide that now. The Tories don't know what they are anymore, and part of it might just be that they're nothing. They're a brand. As a party, they've been the party of capital, but now capital has every party. It can shop around, and the other parties are offering better deals, less drama, and arguably more effective governance in their favour. In the same way that the Liberal Party was totally replaced by Labour as the oppositional force to the Conservatives due to global and local events, and just being caught flat in response to them, the Tories may be a spent force. We might just be witnessing the 21st century version of that process, where a party's death is slow and then sudden. To some extent, that's not anyone's fault. Societies change. Perhaps this is just a sign that the Tories have achieved everything they wanted to do, and there's no real need for them to be a national political force anymore. Nonetheless, it does just feel like they have nothing to say about the world we live in now, and that's really what's going to end them in the long run. That's the other side of the coin too. No one really seems to care what they have to say. Like, I'm astonished by how even some of the more outrageous things their senior politicians say just kind of fly under the radar now. Because as a country, we've just decided it kind of doesn't matter. It's not that Kemi Badenoch referring to certain people as tribal is okay. I think most people are repulsed by that kind of language. It's just that no one cares because everyone knows they're done. As a political movement for conservatism, they have nothing to say. They just complain. And the complaints aren't even that good. Partially, the reason no one cares is that they don't care. They're utterly detached from the country they wish to govern, and the voters they're desperate to win back. This is a problem across the political class, and will be the subject of a future video, but it's especially acute in the Tories. They just don't communicate like real people. They are just very weird. There's this tendency to blame all of this on the disaster that was Liz Truss, and to say that's where it all began. But the truth is, they've been detached in this way for a while. It's only the sheer force of the British press that's propped them up. And as soon as they stopped, well, you know the rest. The issue is, this is driving them more and more towards weirdness. You can see it in Robert Jenrick confronting a fare dodger and crying about Turkish barbers while looking like his mum cut his hair. This is weird. This is faux hardman stuff that no one is going to take seriously. And yeah, we'll be talking about this in a future video too. But for now, acknowledge that this is childish acting out. Normally, if a Tory had behaved like this, it would have been a major news story, and I would have gone out of my way to make it the centerpiece of a video. Instead, the one thing I'm going to use it for is as an aside. I think that just kind of sums it up. I can't even muster the energy to care about these people on their own. It's just subsumed into a general mass. They don't stand out, and it drives them mad. They crave attention, but they have nothing of merit to offer. No vision, no thoughts, no leadership. It's just an act, and not a very good one at that. We've seen in other countries, and even here, that you can construct a circus so big that it takes over the country. But how is that going to work when there's at least 2 other circuses in town? I think they're done, honestly. I think they're done. Like, I can't get past that idea. Once you actually focus on them, it's clear that they're ghosts. You can see right through them because they have no substance. Well, with that, all I have left to do is invite you all to vote in that poll, which will be in the description and in the pinned comment. Tell me what you think, especially in light of the arguments I made. You know where the link is going to be. I'm not going to repeat it because apparently I went off script there and the teleprompter's telling me something else. But feel free to let me know what you think in detail too. I'll come back to this in a couple of weeks and see what I want to do with it. If the results are especially close or we get some thoughtful comments, I might go for a follow-up. Who knows? It's not impossible. If you want my personal thoughts having gone through it all, yeah, they're done. They're cooked. It's over. I was guilty of being far too conservative, ironically, and also to some extent I was just tuned out. At the time I made this argument, I had just done my second video about Keir Starmer. I was focusing on Labour since they're the government, and I wasn't really familiar with just how shit Kemi Badenoch was. So, to know justice, if she's made it this far, my bad. You were right. You were right earlier than I was, so enjoy that. This is the only place online where a leftist is allowed to be right earlier than someone else and not be screamed at for it. Well done. Of course, some of the commenters might disagree. I'll be intrigued to see what arguments you all might come up with. Otherwise, I'm away to bed because I am still a little ill, and I would quite like to get better. So I'm off to do that. That's where the bedroom is. Bye bye, everyone. Yeah. So with that, I need to thank my proofreader who read this on the night of shooting. Thank you to her. I also need to thank the patrons and members. But before I do that, please remember to like, comment, subscribe. It really does help the videos out. The last video went absolutely berserk, and it was great for me. So clearly, you all doing that really helps. But for the patrons and members, if you all want videos early, if you want to vote on topics of videos, if you want to suggest topics for videos, then you need to go over to the Patreon, patreon.com/SKTheCrusader, or join the YouTube membership. And if you join the top tier, you get this shout out. So, special shout out to Drone Riff, Mercutio, Kersley Scheider, John N, Liron, Jar Jar Muba, and Carolyn, who are the top tier patrons, and a shout out to all of the YouTube members: Nadir Jiwa, Katie Marshall, Roger Zugi, Scaly Bubble, and Ben Johnson. A special thank you to all of you. The past 3 months on this channel have been the best on Patreon, have been the best on the YouTube membership, and have been the best in terms of gaining subscribers of any 3-month period on the channel. So that is obviously something I am incredibly grateful for. Thank you so much. If you enjoyed the video, like I said, remember to subscribe. Otherwise, let's go enjoy the Tories' continued collapse, and I am going to do a collapse of my own into bed because I just can't cope with this blocked nose I have. I don't know if it's obvious I have a blocked nose, but I have one. So I'm away. Bye-bye, for real this time. Take it easy.